let's look at the example where we have one limper, early position, and we're sitting here in middle position. We've got our jacks, and we want to isolate the one limper. So we raise it to 4 times the big blind plus 1 per limper. Good. Just one limper in our scenario here. Guy behind us calls our open raise, our 2-bet cold for $5. The 3-better behind us makes a standard textbook 3-bet raise to a total of 3 times the initial raise plus 1 per cold caller, i.e. 20. Why does he raise it to 20? Well, again, it has to do with the equity. And here we're not looking at our 2-bet column, but we're looking at our 3-bet column. So this guy raises to 20, and the initial raiser has 31% or needs 30, let's say 32% equity to make that call if he were to go all in. The same with of course the first cold caller, because they've invested the same amount. Just for the 3-bet call, the guys need 32% to make that call, or they need 32% of hitting a playable flop. Now, if I only raise to 10, for example, here, these guys are getting pot odds of basically 4 to 1, even better than that, 4.5 to 1. So they only need to hit a playable flop 18% of the time, or if they're pushing all in for 5, they only need to take it down 18% of the time to break even in the very, very long run. This is why, raising to 10 is a bit weak, unless of course you have a really strong holding and you want to get called, which is also viable in some circumstances. But when you do so, and people are taking notes and they're playing heads-up poker, they're going to say, okay, after the hand they're going to see you show down, your kings or your aces here with a min raise after an open raiser, a limper, an open raiser, and a cold caller. Min raise here, and they're going to put a little note on you that says min raised in position with kings on a full ring table, whatever. But when you raise to 20, and you do that standard, right, you make that your standard move, your standard bet size, you're impossible to read. If you make this as a squeeze move with 4 or 5 suited, or if you make this bet size, with your aces, you're completely unreadable based on your bet sizing. Now that may or may not be a good may or may not be a good thing, but the positive aspect of that is that nobody can actually read you, especially online, based on the amount that you bet. If you're always sticking to these principles here that I've listed in red for you guys. So that's how that looks. If I then raise it up, let's say I raise it up to 25, right? All of a sudden these guys need 35% equity. Let's say I pop it to 40. Right, all of a sudden they need 40% equity to make that call, and so on. And let's say I just push over the top. I think whatever, it's ridiculous, and these guys now need 45% to call me all in, and which they'll have when they're playing ace king against my pair, but whatever. Now let's say, okay, guy, we made this open raise, we got a cold caller, and then a 3-bet behind us, and this dude here for some reason says, okay, maybe he's on the button, or maybe he's in the small blind or the big blind. He says, no, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to make this 50 for everybody. Alright, so he's going to 4-bet it to 2.5 times this guy's 3-bet, making it 50. And here, as the rule dictates, he's already, if he's playing 100 big blind stack, he's already committing half of his stack at 50. So he could just make the $50 bet, right, in the hopes of getting called. But if he's not so certain, it's better that he go ahead and push right now, because on any given flop, if he gets one call, right, he's going to have already half of the pot size. So that means even with this $50 bet, you're already looking at a situation where you probably should go ahead and push. Not necessarily, but if you do get one 3-bet caller, then you definitely want to be pushing, because you're already at 2/3 of your stack. I hope that's clear to everybody. Let's say for, just educational purposes, he then makes the standard 2.5 times bet. Let's say, okay, this guy checked out. Just open raise to isolate the limper. We get one guy behind us who then 3-bets us to 15, and this guy makes it 37.50. All right, 2.5 times the 3-bet size. Okay, what's the equity that we need? All right, we're calling what now? A 4-bet. Okay, so small blind calling the 4-bet needs 38%, and all the way down. Big blind needs a little less, Limper, of course, exactly the same as a big blind at that point. And the initial raiser needs 35% equity in order to call that 4-bet cold, say. The 3-better needs only 27% to make the same call. And that's how it works out. The assumption here is, of course, that everybody folds to this person here. So this guy makes the 4-bet, fold, 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 actions on the initial raiser, and he needs 35% equity to make that call and break even in the long run. Again, if he's to go all in, and of course he needs a 35% probability of hitting a playable flop if he still has a stack to play with after the fact, which in this case he would, being a big stack player. Alright, very good. This guy that makes it 37, in our example, let's go ahead and put our caller back in there, and our cold caller, and somebody behind him says, okay, I'm done with this. we're gonna play for stacks, and he pushes over the top for the 100. Total pot size is now 182, 50, and this guy pops it to 5. Makes a 5-bet, pushes all in, as very often you should, of course. If you're super deep stacked, let's say these two guys are playing 250 big blind stacks. Well, okay, he only raised it to 50. Okay, that would, even then you'd still be committing half your stack, but let's say these guys are playing 400 big blind stacks. It does actually happen live, especially. This guy makes it 50. You can make it 150 here as a 5-bet, and potentially then fold if somebody comes over the top and you don't have aces. You know, playing deep stacks a bit different, but as a principle, again, 2.5 to 3.5 times the previous raise amount is where you need to be as a general rule. And again, anytime you're committing half your stack, go ahead and push it. A lot of people would say anytime you're pushing a third of your stack, go ahead and push it pre or post flop. So what are the equities that we need here when somebody does make that 5-bet all-in for 100 big blinds? Well, they're right here. Alright, and this guy needs everybody else to fold. If he's making a 5-bet push as a bluff, he needs everybody to fold more than half the time in order to break even in the long run as a pure bluff. Alright, and the remaining guys need the respective equity to make that call. That's essentially how that works out. Guys, you can play with this a bit. You can give it multiple limpers, and then your standard raise would be here for 7. You know, let's say you get one caller after the fact. If you are to 3-bet, it's already at 28. Let's say there's a guy who just decides to call that on top of it. And these guys are now calling, everybody's calling 3-bets. Right? So they need respectively 27% more or less and 22% for the initial raisers and cold callers. Yeah, and that's how that works out. This guy here, of course, if he's making this 28 buck squeeze raise as a bluff, he needs all what do we 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7 of these guys to fold up to 60% of the time in order to break even in the long run. Yeah, and that's how that would work out. Again, here already the 4-bet's a push, so yeah, that's more or less how it is. And yeah, again, this calculator is of course available to everybody on our site. Underneath here we've got just general advice. It's more or less the outline. I'll let you guys just pause the video and scroll through that as you like. Yeah, and again, yeah, we'll cover this in relatively great detail here in these theoretical videos. And of course, this is all very, very fundamental information that you need also when you're watching the coaching sessions or the recordings of live play or online play. All of this is very fundamental knowledge that you should have committed to memory. But I'll just recap here. You know, everything you see here in red, as a general rule, is something good to adhere to. The principle is 4 times the big blind plus 1 per limper when you make an open raise. When you decide to re-raise, it's 3 times the initial raise plus 1 per cold caller. If you decide to 4-bet, it's then 2.5 to 3.5 times this raise plus 1 per cold caller. Okay, 3-bet caller. Good. Given your opponents the respective needed equity to make a call, either all in or to hit a playable flop. So again, I mean, when you're only, let's say it's at 16 and you make some, kind of a min raise, these guys can call you. I mean, one time in 6, easy. And yeah, I mean, if you want them to do that, that's a good thing to do. If you don't, if you're on a kind of a vulnerable hand, then you definitely want to stick to the game plan.